Everybody knows that the only reason to watch M. Night Shyamalan movies anymore outside of masochism is because of the nostalgia over how much the twists in his 3 good movies got you back in the day. With that in mind, please allow the magic of spoilers to help remove any lingering obligation you might feel to see this one. This is cliche enough to be in one of his movies at this point, but I've gotta say it. Is there any universe where M. Night Shyamalan is not the biggest disappointment in the history of post-1970s American film? Seriously, once upon a time, the Indian-American answer to Irva Boll here hit 3 home runs in a row and had serious-minded people actually calling him the next Spielberg. And then with his very next project, he set off on a path of film after film that would have easily qualified as a career-ending celluloid aneurysm from anyone else in the business. His continuing existence as an employable filmmaker though, to be fair, at least this one is an appropriately budgeted $5 million cheapie for the Blumhouse people, feels like Hollywood buying carbon offset credits for amoral indifference. Yeah, sure, we're a bunch of greedy, decadent, narcissistic bottom feeders, but hey, we're not all bad. Look, we've been voluntarily keeping this drooling has-been off government assistance for like 13 years. But you know what? At least up to this point, he'd been an interesting failure. He was making horrible films, but at least he was doing so while trying to grow as a filmmaker. Experimenting with different genres, different narrative techniques, different styles. That's the right kind of experimenting. Hell, that's the second best version of the word experimenting. But with The Visit, we find Shyamalan ready to crawl back to the Sixth Sense well. So here we are with another low-budget atmospheric thriller about precocious moppets navigating a protracted Twilight Zone episode wherein the most staggeringly obvious explanation for the mystery of what the fuck is going wrong is exactly what's going on. The older sister is a wannabe filmmaker documenting her week, allowing characters to talk directly to the camera, monologue about the big themes of guilt, loss, and familial abandonment, and allowing Shyamalan to hang lampshades all over the place about mise-en-scene, denouement, pacing, and use of music to excuse all of his techniques from being as blunt and obvious as possible. And none of it fucking works. Even outside of the twist, there's nothing happening here worth watching. Only one of the cheap jump scares hits, barely. The kids are insufferable, and he can't even make the familiar horror of common situation stuff work. All the potentially interesting psychological thriller stuff you could do about misunderstood human behavior or unfamiliar environments gets tossed aside in favor of exaggerating someone's broad list of weird, gross stuff about old people, into horror movie cliches. And that's the thing. I was all set to wrap this up by waxing rhapsodic about how every single thing Shyamalan has made since The Village has been so hatefully bad that we almost need a new metric to measure his output by. Otherwise, whereas, say, The Happening might have been a federal crime for any other filmmaker, compared to Lady in the Water, it looks merely average. Picking a worst Shyamalan movie is like your doctor asking which jagged-edged bowel obstruction you'd like him to remove last. But the sheer spasmic vomit-inducing toxicity of his latest crystallizes a more pressing realization. As much as critics and audiences have come to hate him, Shyamalan hates them more. And The Visit is nothing less than an act of violence visited upon the audience. But here's the thing, Knight, you aren't the class of '99 wunderkind who jumped ahead into some visionary next-level filmmaking that Michael Bay's America just wasn't ready to follow you to. That was the Wachowskis. You made The Village. You made The Happening. You made The Last Airbender. You made Devil. You made After Earth. You made Lady in the fucking Water, which featured a film critic eating monster and starred yourself as a misunderstood super genius writer whose work will one day save the world. And now you made this. You made all that shit, you brought all this scorn down on yourself. And the movies didn't go over anyone's head, nobody misunderstood anything, no critic turned up their nose as you boldly subverted narrative convention. You, as it turned out, aren't really that interesting. All the garbage you've been farting out for the last decade and change has been safe, soft, middle-brow popcorn pablum, and you couldn't even do that right. You did this to yourself, and you got only yourself to blame. What a twist. Now, how about you take your metaphorical and shove it in your own face?